The cocaine scandal that never broke. Paul Hogan's hidden Hollywood addictions. In the shadow-filled corridors of Hollywood's drug underworld, few scandals have been as successfully buried as Paul Hogan's decade-long cocaine addiction that nearly destroyed his career, his family, and his life during the height of his Crocodile Dundee fame. This is the explosive exposé of how Australia's most beloved cultural ambassador became one of Hollywood's most notorious secret addicts, maintaining his wholesome public image while spiraling into a cocaine-fueled nightmare that consumed millions of dollars, destroyed relationships, and left him dancing on the razor's edge between international stardom and complete self-destruction. The cocaine scandal that never broke represents one of the entertainment industry's most successful cover-ups, as Paul's management team, studio executives, and Hollywood power brokers conspired to protect their multi-million-dollar investment by systematically hiding his addiction from public scrutiny while enabling his destructive behavior through an elaborate network of suppliers, enablers, and corruption that reached the highest levels of the entertainment establishment. This investigation reveals how Paul's transformation from humble Australian bridge worker to international cocaine addict began innocently with Hollywood party culture but escalated into a full-blown dependency that required increasingly dangerous and expensive solutions to maintain his supply while keeping his addiction hidden from fans, media, and law enforcement agencies that might have destroyed his career and cultural legacy. Most shocking of all, the evidence suggests that Paul's cocaine addiction wasn't just a personal failing, but the inevitable result of a toxic Hollywood culture that systematically corrupts successful performers through deliberate drug introduction, enabling behavior, and protection rackets that keep addicted celebrities dependent on industry power structures while extracting maximum profit from their compromised condition. The story of Paul's hidden cocaine scandal demonstrates how Hollywood's drug networks operate with impunity, corrupting even the most wholesome public figures while maintaining elaborate facades that protect both the addicted celebrities and the criminal organizations that supply and enable their destructive habits for decades without legal consequences or public exposure. Chapter 1. The First Taste of Poison. Paul Hogan's descent into cocaine addiction began not in the sleazy back alleys that most people associate with drug abuse, but in the glittering mansions and exclusive parties of Beverly Hills, where Hollywood's elite introduced him to what they euphemistically called party powder during his first weeks in Los Angeles following Crocodile Dundee's unprecedented international success. The initial introduction occurred at a celebration party hosted by studio executives in late night, where Paul was encouraged to try a little something to help with the energy demands of promotion tours by people he trusted as industry professionals who had his best interests at heart, unaware that he was being systematically recruited into a dependency that would serve their financial and control interests for decades. The psychological vulnerability that made Paul susceptible to cocaine addiction included the overwhelming pressure of sudden international fame, isolation from his Australian support systems, and the need to maintain energy levels for grueling promotional schedules that required superhuman stamina and artificial confidence that cocaine seemed to provide effortlessly. "You have to understand, everyone was doing it," a former studio insider revealed years later under condition of anonymity. "It wasn't seen as drug dealing, it was just part of the Hollywood lifestyle." Paul was this innocent Australian guy who trusted people, and they took advantage of that trust to hook him on something that would keep him controllable and profitable. The escalation from casual party use to regular dependency happened with shocking speed, as Paul discovered that cocaine provided not just energy but confidence, humor, and social lubrication that seemed to enhance his natural charisma while eliminating the anxiety and homesickness that plagued him during his early Hollywood years. The financial resources that Paul possessed through his Crocodile Dundee success made him an ideal target for high-end drug dealers who specialized in celebrity clients, as his wealth meant he could afford top-quality product while his public profile meant he desperately needed discretion that only the most exclusive suppliers could provide. The initial secrecy surrounding Paul's cocaine use was maintained through his management team's elaborate scheduling arrangements that built private time into his calendar for relaxation and recovery, which actually served as opportunities for drug use without public observation or professional interference that might have interrupted his developing addiction. The physical effects of cocaine use initially seemed positive to Paul and his handlers, as the drug increased his energy, confidence, and comedic timing during interviews and appearances, creating a feedback loop where success seemed to validate drug use rather than raising concerns about potential long-term consequences. The social circle that formed around Paul's cocaine use included other high-profile celebrities, industry executives, and professional enablers who normalized drug use while providing mutual protection and alibis that kept their collective addiction hidden from public scrutiny or legal investigation. The denial mechanisms that Paul developed to rationalize his cocaine use included viewing it as temporary stress relief, professional requirement, and social expectation, rather than acknowledging the developing dependency that was already beginning to affect his judgment, relationships, and physical health in ways that would become irreversible over time. The security measures that protected Paul's cocaine use from public exposure included private planes for drug transportation, exclusive venues with guaranteed privacy, and carefully vetted staff who were paid substantial bonuses for maintaining absolute confidentiality about celebrity drug activities they witnessed during their employment. The enabling behavior of Paul's professional circle included agents, publicists, and studio executives who not only tolerated his cocaine use but actively facilitated it by providing supplies, arranging private spaces for drug consumption, and creating alibis that explained erratic behavior or missed appointments without raising suspicions about underlying addiction problems. The financial cost of maintaining Paul's cocaine habit during its early stages was relatively modest compared to his earnings, but the psychological price included increasing dependence on artificial stimulation for normal social and professional functioning that would eventually require larger quantities of higher quality drugs to achieve the same effects. The relationship damage that Paul's early cocaine use created included growing distance from family members who noticed personality changes, mood swings, and erratic behavior that he attributed to career stress, but which actually reflected the beginning stages of serious drug addiction that would consume his life for the next decade. The professional protection that Hollywood power brokers provided for Paul's cocaine use included media manipulation, story suppression, and strategic distraction campaigns designed to prevent public discovery of his addiction while maintaining his valuable public image that generated enormous profits for multiple entertainment industry stakeholders. The warning signs that were systematically ignored during Paul's early cocaine use included weight loss, sleep disturbances, paranoia, financial irregularities, and social isolation that addiction counselors would have immediately recognized, but which were dismissed by industry professionals who profited from maintaining his dependency rather than addressing his growing health and safety concerns. Chapter 2: The Hollywood Drug Machine. As Paul Hogan's cocaine addiction deepened throughout the late 1980s, he became enmeshed in a sophisticated Hollywood drug distribution network that operated with the efficiency of a major corporation, complete with specialized roles, hierarchical structures, and protection systems that kept high-profile celebrity clients supplied while maintaining absolute secrecy about their operations and customer base. The supplier network that served Paul's cocaine needs included multiple layers of distributors, from high-end dealers who worked exclusively with A-list celebrities to street-level operators who provided security and transportation services, creating a complex chain of criminal activity that was nearly impossible for law enforcement to penetrate or prosecute effectively. The financial arrangements that supported Paul's cocaine purchases evolved from simple cash transactions to complex money laundering schemes involving shell companies, offshore accounts, and entertainment industry front businesses that disguised drug payments as legitimate production expenses, consulting fees, and promotional costs that appeared normal in financial audits. The amounts of money flowing through these operations were staggering, a former DEA investigator revealed. We're talking about millions of dollars per month just for the celebrity clients, and Paul was one of the biggest spenders. His habit was consuming more money than most people make in a lifetime, but it was all hidden through legitimate-looking business transactions. The quality control systems that Hollywood drug networks maintained for celebrity clients like Paul included specialized testing laboratories, pure product guarantees, and customized delivery services that ensured consistent potency and purity that reduced the risk of overdose or contamination might have created public scandals or criminal investigations. The security protocols that protected Paul's drug activities included counter-surveillance measures, encrypted communications, and elaborate delivery systems using legitimate entertainment industry vehicles and personnel to transport cocaine without attracting law enforcement attention or creating evidence trails that could be used in criminal prosecutions. The corruption that enabled Paul's cocaine network to operate with impunity included payments to law enforcement officials, entertainment industry executives, and media figures who received substantial bribes to ignore, suppress, or redirect investigations that might have exposed the drug operations or celebrity participants involved in regular cocaine purchases and consumption. The international connections that supplied Paul's cocaine addiction included South American cartels, European distributors, and Asian money laundering operations that used entertainment industry business relationships to move drugs and cash across international borders without detection by customs authorities or financial crime investigators. The celebrity client protection services that Paul's drug network provided included legal representation, media manipulation, and crisis management specialists who were prepared to handle any situation that might arise from drug-related arrests, overdoses, public exposure incidents that could damage valuable celebrity brands or criminal operations. The addiction maintenance programs that Hollywood drug dealers developed for long-term celebrity clients like Paul included regular supply schedules, dosage management, and health monitoring services designed to keep clients functional while preventing overdoses or breakdowns that might interrupt profitable drug sales relationships. The evidence destruction systems that protected Paul's drug network included document shredding, electronic data wiping, and witness intimidation protocols that eliminated potential proof of criminal activity while ensuring that celebrity clients, suppliers, and enablers could never be successfully prosecuted for their roles in ongoing drug operations. The insider information that Paul's drug network gathered through their entertainment industry connections included advanced knowledge of DEA investigations, media inquiries, and industry gossip that allowed them to adjust operations, relocate activities, and prepare legal defenses before law enforcement or journalists could gather sufficient evidence for criminal charges or public expose stories. The professional overlap between legitimate entertainment businesses and drug operations created perfect cover for criminal activities, as the same private jets, luxury hotels, production facilities, and financial services that supported Paul's career also facilitated drug transportation, money laundering, and criminal coordination without attracting suspicion from authorities. The addiction progression management that Paul's dealers implemented included gradual dosage increases, product variety introduction, and dependency deepening strategies designed to maximize long-term revenue while keeping celebrity clients functional enough to continue earning the money necessary to support their expensive drug habits and criminal organization profits. The crisis intervention capabilities that Paul's drug network maintained included medical professionals, legal experts, and public relations specialists who could respond immediately to overdoses, arrests, or media discoveries without involving legitimate emergency services or law enforcement agencies that might have exposed the entire criminal operation. The territorial protection that Paul's drug suppliers maintained through violence and intimidation ensured that their celebrity clients remained exclusive customers while eliminating competition from other criminal organizations that might have offered better prices, higher quality products, or more secure operations that could have reduced profits for established drug networks. Chapter 3: The Escalating Dependency. In 1989, Paul Hogan's cocaine addiction had escalated beyond recreational use to become a full-blown physical and psychological dependency that required increasingly larger quantities of higher-grade product to achieve the same effects, creating a vicious cycle of tolerance, withdrawal, and compulsive use that consumed his thoughts, finances, and daily schedule with frightening intensity. The tolerance buildup that characterized Paul's progressing addiction meant that the modest amounts of cocaine that had initially provided energy and confidence were no longer sufficient to achieve desired effects, forcing him to consume dangerous quantities that pushed his cardiovascular system to potentially fatal limits on a daily basis. The withdrawal symptoms that Paul experienced when cocaine was unavailable included severe depression, overwhelming fatigue, intense cravings, paranoid anxiety, and suicidal ideation that made normal functioning impossible and drove him to desperate measures to maintain his supply regardless of cost, risk, or consequences to his career and relationships. His behavior became completely erratic and unpredictable, a former assistant revealed. One minute he'd be flying high, making jokes and charming everyone, and the next he'd be locked in his trailer for hours, sweating and shaking and calling dealers frantically. It was terrifying to watch this transformation of someone who had been so stable and grounded. The financial hemorrhaging that Paul's escalating addiction created included not just the direct cost of cocaine purchases, which had reached hundreds of thousands of dollars per month, but also the bribes, security costs, medical expenses, and hush money required to maintain secrecy while managing the increasingly complex logistics of serious drug dependency. The health deterioration that accompanied Paul's deepening addiction included rapid weight loss, chronic insomnia, heart palpitations, nosebleeds, respiratory problems, and neurological symptoms that required constant medical attention from corrupted healthcare providers who treated his drug-related conditions while maintaining absolute confidentiality about their cause. The performance impact that cocaine addiction had on Paul's professional work included missed appointments, erratic behavior during interviews, inconsistent energy levels during filming, and growing difficulty maintaining the cheerful, reliable persona that had made him internationally beloved while battling internal chaos from drug dependency, The relationship destruction that Paul's addiction created included growing isolation from family members who couldn't understand his personality changes, increasing conflict with professional colleagues who found him unreliable, and deepening dependence on drug-using associates who enabled his addiction while exploiting his vulnerability for their own benefit. The paranoia development that accompanied Paul's chronic cocaine use included obsessive concerns about surveillance, irrational fears of betrayal by trusted associates, and elaborate security measures designed to protect his drug activities from detection by law enforcement, media, or entertainment industry executives who might have ended his career if they discovered his addiction. The dosage escalation that Paul's tolerance required meant progressing from occasional recreational use to multiple daily administrations of pharmaceutical-grade cocaine that cost more per gram than most people earned per week, while delivering diminishing returns that drove him to seek increasingly exotic and dangerous drug combinations to achieve desired effects. The supply chain management that Paul's serious addiction required included maintaining relationships with multiple dealers to ensure uninterrupted availability, stockpiling large quantities of cocaine to prevent withdrawal emergencies, and developing elaborate payment systems that could handle the massive financial transactions necessary to support heavy daily drug consumption. The criminal exposure that Paul's escalating dependency created included direct involvement in drug trafficking operations, money laundering schemes, and corruption networks that could have resulted in serious federal charges if discovered by law enforcement agencies investigating Hollywood's extensive drug trade and celebrity client protection systems. The medical emergency risks that Paul's heavy cocaine use created included potentially fatal cardiovascular episodes, respiratory failure, neurological damage, and overdose scenarios that required having medical professionals on standby to provide emergency treatment without involving hospitals or emergency services that might have created public records of his drug problems. The psychological deterioration that chronic cocaine abuse caused in Paul's mental state included growing difficulty distinguishing reality from paranoid fantasies, increasing inability to make rational decisions about his career and relationships, and deepening emotional instability that made him vulnerable to manipulation by criminals who profited from maintaining his addiction. The professional covering operations that Paul's addiction required included elaborate scheduling arrangements, body doubles for public appearances during withdrawal periods, voice coaching to mask speech changes caused by drug use, and coordinated alibis involving dozens of industry professionals who were paid substantial amounts to maintain fictional explanations for his erratic behavior. The family deception that Paul's addiction necessitated included increasingly sophisticated lies about his activities, health problems, and financial expenditures, while maintaining the facade of being a devoted father and husband who was simply dealing with normal career pressures rather than battling life-threatening drug dependency that consumed his every waking moment. Chapter 4. The Criminal Network exposed. The criminal organization that supplied and protected Paul Hogan's cocaine addiction operated with the sophistication of an international corporation, employing hundreds of people across multiple countries and generating annual revenues in excess of $500 million through celebrity drug sales, money laundering operations, and corruption networks that reached the highest levels of entertainment, law enforcement, and political establishments. The organizational structure that enabled Paul's drug supply included specialized divisions for procurement, transportation, security, financial services, legal protection, and media manipulation, each staffed by professional criminals who brought expertise from military, intelligence, financial, and entertainment industry backgrounds to their illegal operations. The procurement division that sourced Paul's cocaine worked directly with South American cartels, maintaining exclusive contracts for high-purity product that was specifically processed for celebrity clients who required consistent quality and potency to maintain their expensive habits without risking overdoses that might have exposed the entire criminal network to investigation. The level of organization was incredible, a federal investigator revealed. They had chemists, accountants, lawyers, doctors, security specialists, and even public relations experts all working together to keep celebrities like Paul supplied while protecting everyone involved from law enforcement. It was more sophisticated than most legitimate businesses. The transportation network that delivered Paul's cocaine included private jets, luxury vehicles, diplomatic pouches, and entertainment industry equipment that moved drugs across international borders and domestic jurisdictions without triggering customs inspections or police investigations that might have disrupted operations or exposed celebrity clients. The financial services division that handled Paul's drug payments operated through offshore banks, shell corporations, cryptocurrency exchanges, and entertainment industry front businesses that disguised millions of dollars in drug purchases as legitimate production expenses, consulting fees, and promotional costs that appeared normal to tax authorities and financial regulators. The security operations that protected Paul's drug activities included counter-surveillance teams, encrypted communication systems, witness intimidation services, and violence specialists who eliminated threats to the criminal organization while ensuring that celebrity clients could consume drugs without fear of robbery, extortion, or exposure by competing criminal groups. The corruption network that enabled Paul's drug supplier to operate with impunity included judges, prosecutors, police officials, customs agents, banking regulators, and entertainment industry executives who received substantial bribes to ignore, suppress, or misdirect investigations that might have exposed celebrity drug operations or criminal organization activities. The legal protection services that Paul's drug network provided included teams of criminal defense attorneys, evidence suppression specialists, witness tampering experts, and jury manipulation professionals who were prepared to defend celebrity clients and criminal organization members against any charges that law enforcement might have filed despite corruption protections. The media manipulation division that controlled information about Paul's drug activities included entertainment journalists, television producers, public relations specialists, and social media managers who created positive coverage while suppressing negative stories that might have exposed celebrity drug use or criminal organization operations to public scrutiny. The medical services that Paul's drug network provided included addiction-specialized physicians, emergency response teams, rehabilitation specialists, and psychological counselors who treated drug-related health problems while maintaining absolute confidentiality about celebrity clients and criminal organization members involved in ongoing illegal activities. The international coordination that Paul's drug suppliers maintained included operations in Colombia, Mexico, Panama, Switzerland, Luxembourg, and the Cayman Islands that facilitated drug production, money laundering, tax evasion, and criminal organization management, while exploiting jurisdictional limitations that prevented effective law enforcement cooperation and prosecution. The celebrity recruitment programs that Paul's drug network operated included systematic introduction of new clients through exclusive parties, professional networking events, and entertainment industry gatherings where successful performers were deliberately exposed to drugs and gradually developed into profitable long-term customers who generated enormous revenue for criminal organizations. The technology integration that Paul's drug suppliers employed included encrypted messaging systems, cryptocurrency payment processing, blockchain money laundering, artificial intelligence surveillance detection, and sophisticated counterintelligence operations that kept criminal activities hidden from law enforcement agencies using traditional investigation methods. The violence capabilities that Paul's drug network maintained included assassination specialists, torture experts, kidnapping teams, and intimidation professionals who eliminated threats to criminal organization security while ensuring that celebrity clients and criminal organization members never betrayed operational secrets to law enforcement or media investigators. The political protection that enabled Paul's drug suppliers to operate freely included contributions to political campaigns, lobbying activities, regulatory capture operations, and international treaty manipulation that created legal frameworks favorable to criminal organization activities while preventing effective law enforcement responses to celebrity drug operations and related criminal activities. Chapter 5: The Cover-Up Operations. The elaborate cover-up operations that concealed Paul Hogan's cocaine addiction from public discovery represented one of Hollywood's most successful conspiracy efforts, involving coordinated deception by entertainment industry executives, media manipulators, and criminal organization specialists who spent millions of dollars over more than a decade to protect their valuable celebrity asset from exposure that would have destroyed his career and their profitable relationship. The media suppression campaigns that protected Paul's drug secret included systematic intimidation of journalists, strategic placement of positive stories, coordinated distraction narratives, and direct payments to news organizations that agreed to ignore evidence of celebrity drug use while promoting favorable coverage that maintained his wholesome public image. The studio executive protection that enabled Paul's addiction to continue included contractual clauses that prevented drug testing, insurance fraud that covered addiction-related health problems as legitimate medical expenses, and coordinated alibis that explained erratic behavior as creative temperament rather than drug-induced psychological instability. The amount of money and effort that went into hiding Paul's cocaine problem was staggering, a former publicist revealed. Every major studio, talent agency, and media company in Hollywood was involved in some way. They all had too much invested in his image to let the truth come out, so they created this massive conspiracy to protect him and themselves. The legal manipulation that protected Paul from criminal prosecution included police corruption that prevented drug arrests, prosecutorial misconduct that dismissed charges, judicial bribery that suppressed evidence, and regulatory capture that eliminated government oversight of entertainment industry drug activities that might have exposed celebrity clients and criminal suppliers. The financial fraud that concealed Paul's drug expenses included sophisticated money laundering through entertainment industry businesses, false invoicing for non-existent services, tax evasion through offshore accounts,
and insurance fraud that disguised drug-related medical treatment as legitimate healthcare expenses covered by studio policies. The witness intimidation that maintained secrecy about Paul's addiction included death threats against potential informants, economic blackmail of entertainment industry employees, physical violence against journalists investigating celebrity drug use, and systematic destruction of evidence that might have proved criminal organization involvement in celebrity drug operations. The international coordination that protected Paul's drug activities included diplomatic immunity abuse, customs corruption, banking secrecy violations, and treaty manipulation that prevented law enforcement cooperation between countries investigating celebrity drug trafficking and money laundering operations that violated multiple international laws.
The medical cover-up that disguised Paul's addiction included falsified health records, bribed physicians who provided false diagnoses, corrupted insurance companies that paid fraudulent claims, and specialized addiction treatment facilities that maintained absolute confidentiality while enabling, rather than treating celebrity drug dependencies. The family deception that protected Paul's public image included elaborate lies to his children and spouse, coordinated alibis involving extended family members, financial fraud that disguised drug expenses as legitimate household costs, and psychological manipulation that blamed relationship problems on career stress rather than drug addiction. The industry blacklisting that maintained cover-up integrity included career destruction for anyone who threatened to expose Paul's addiction, economic warfare against media companies that investigated celebrity drug use, and systematic punishment of entertainment industry professionals who refused to participate in conspiracy operations or criminal organization protection services. The technology manipulation that concealed Paul's drug activities included surveillance equipment that monitored potential informants, encrypted communications that coordinated cover-up operations, electronic evidence destruction that eliminated proof of criminal activity, and sophisticated cyber warfare that attacked anyone investigating celebrity drug networks or criminal organization operations. The political corruption that enabled Paul's cover-up included campaign contributions that purchased government protection, lobbying activities that prevented anti-drug legislation, regulatory capture that eliminated oversight of entertainment industry criminal activity, and international treaty manipulation that created legal frameworks favorable to celebrity drug operations and criminal organization activities. The psychological warfare that maintained Paul's cover-up included gaslighting techniques that made potential informants doubt their own observations, social isolation of anyone who threatened exposure, character assassination campaigns against journalists investigating celebrity drug use, and systematic mental health attacks designed to discredit potential witnesses. The crisis management that protected Paul during addiction emergencies included specialized medical teams that responded to overdoses without involving legitimate emergency services, legal experts who suppressed criminal charges, public relations specialists who created alternative explanations for erratic behavior, and violence professionals who eliminated threats to cover up integrity. The long-term sustainability that characterized Paul's cover-up operations included succession planning for key personnel, financial reserves that could handle emergency situations, relationship maintenance with corrupted officials, and continuous recruitment of new conspiracy participants who could replace anyone who became unreliable or threatened to expose the criminal organization protecting celebrity drug operations. Chapter 6: The Health Crisis and Near-Death Experiences. By the early 1990s, Paul Hogan's cocaine addiction had progressed to such dangerous levels that he experienced multiple near-fatal medical emergencies that required immediate intervention by criminal organization, medical specialists who treated life-threatening overdoses, cardiovascular episodes, and neurological crises while maintaining absolute secrecy about the drug-related causes of his deteriorating health condition. The cardiovascular damage that Paul's chronic cocaine use inflicted included irregular heartbeat, dangerously elevated blood pressure, damaged heart muscle, and compromised circulation that created constant risk of heart attack, stroke, or sudden cardiac death that could have ended his life at any moment during his heaviest drug consumption periods. The respiratory complications that Paul developed from cocaine abuse included chronic breathing problems, damaged nasal passages, lung tissue deterioration, and reduced oxygen capacity that affected his physical stamina and cognitive function while creating additional health risks that compounded the cardiovascular dangers of continued drug use. His physical condition was absolutely terrifying, a medical professional revealed under condition of anonymity. Multiple times we thought he was going to die right there in front of us. His heart rate would spike to dangerous levels, he'd stop breathing properly, and his blood pressure would go through the roof. We were basically doing emergency medicine to keep him alive while he continued poisoning himself. The neurological effects that Paul's heavy cocaine consumption caused included seizure activity, cognitive impairment, memory problems, personality changes, and psychological instability that affected his ability to work, maintain relationships, and make rational decisions about his health and safety while deepening his drug dependency. The weight loss that accompanied Paul's addiction created additional health problems, including malnutrition, immune system suppression, muscle wasting, and skeletal weakness that made him more vulnerable to injuries, infections, and other medical complications that could have proved fatal given his compromised physical condition. The sleep deprivation that chronic cocaine use created left Paul in a constant state of exhaustion that was temporarily relieved by drug consumption, but which created cumulative health damage, including hormonal imbalances, immune system dysfunction, and psychological deterioration that affected every aspect of his physical and mental well-being. The overdose incidents that Paul survived during his addiction included multiple episodes where criminal organization medical specialists had to administer emergency treatment to prevent death from drug toxicity, breathing failure, or cardiovascular collapse while maintaining secrecy that prevented legitimate medical care or addiction treatment. The paranoid psychosis that Paul developed from chronic cocaine abuse included irrational fears, auditory hallucinations, delusional thinking, and violent impulses that made him dangerous to himself and others while requiring constant supervision by criminal organization security personnel who protected him from consequences of his drug-induced psychological instability. The infection risks that Paul's drug use created included contaminated drug supplies, non-sterile administration methods, and compromised immune system function that made him vulnerable to serious illnesses that could have been fatal without proper medical treatment that had to be provided secretly by corrupted healthcare professionals. The suicide risks that Paul's addiction created during withdrawal periods included severe depression, hopelessness, guilt, and self-destructive impulses that required constant monitoring and intervention by criminal organizations, psychological specialists who prevented self-harm while enabling continued drug use that perpetuated the cycle of addiction and health deterioration. The organ damage that Paul's cocaine use inflicted included liver toxicity, kidney dysfunction, brain tissue damage, and endocrine system disruption that created permanent health problems requiring ongoing medical treatment while increasing risks of complete organ failure that could have ended his life at any time. The medical emergency protocols that criminal organization specialists developed for Paul's health crises included portable life support equipment, emergency drug reversal medications, crisis response teams, and secure medical facilities that could provide intensive care without involving legitimate hospitals or emergency services that might have created public records of his drug problems. The health monitoring systems that Paul's drug suppliers implemented included regular medical examinations, blood testing for drug levels and organ function, cardiovascular monitoring, and psychological evaluation designed to keep him functional while preventing fatal overdoses or health crises that might have exposed criminal organization operations to investigation. The addiction progression that Paul's deteriorating health accelerated included increasing tolerance that required larger drug doses, more frequent administration to prevent withdrawal symptoms, and combination drug use that multiplied health risks while deepening psychological dependency that made recovery increasingly difficult, even if he had wanted to seek legitimate addiction treatment. The recovery sabotage that criminal organization specialists employed whenever Paul attempted to reduce his drug use included deliberate withdrawal symptom intensification, psychological manipulation that increased cravings, social pressure from other addicted celebrities, and deliberate creation of stressful situations that drove him back to drug use as coping mechanism rather than allowing successful addiction treatment. Chapter 7: The Family Destruction and Relationship Carnage. Paul Hogan's cocaine addiction created a pathway of relationship destruction that systematically eliminated every meaningful human connection in his life, as his drug dependency transformed him from loving father and husband into manipulative addict, whose primary relationships became tools for maintaining secrecy, financing drug purchases, and enabling continued substance abuse that consumed his capacity for authentic love or commitment. The marriage destruction that Paul's addiction caused with both his first wife Nolene and later with Linda Kozlowski included systematic deception about his drug activities, emotional manipulation to prevent discovery of his addiction, financial fraud to pay for cocaine purchases, and psychological abuse that blamed relationship problems on his partners rather than acknowledging his drug dependency. The child abandonment that Paul's addiction created included physical absence during important family events, emotional unavailability during critical developmental periods, financial neglect as drug expenses consumed resources intended for family support, and psychological damage to children who couldn't understand their father's dramatic personality changes and erratic behavior. "The man I married disappeared completely," a family member revealed. He became this paranoid, secretive person who would lie about everything: where he was, what he was doing, how he was spending money. The kids were terrified of him when he was using, and heartbroken when he was coming down.
It destroyed everyone who loved him. The parental failure that Paul's cocaine use created included inability to provide consistent guidance, protection, or emotional support to his children, while modeling destructive behavior that taught them that success and fame justified any behavior, including criminal activity, drug abuse, and abandonment of family responsibilities for personal gratification. The friend alienation that Paul's addiction caused included systematic elimination of anyone who questioned his drug use, increasing dependence on criminal associates who enabled his addiction while exploiting his vulnerability, and destruction of professional relationships with colleagues who found his drug-influenced behavior unreliable and dangerous to their own careers. The extended family damage that Paul's addiction created included manipulation of relatives who were used to provide alibis for drug activities, financial exploitation of family members who were deceived into supporting his expenses, and psychological trauma inflicted on people who watched helplessly as someone they loved destroyed himself through drug abuse. The trust destruction that Paul's drug dependency caused included systematic violation of every promise he made to family members about stopping drug use, elaborate deception about his activities and whereabouts, financial betrayal involving money that was supposed to support family needs but was diverted to drug purchases, and emotional manipulation that exploited family love to enable continued addiction. The violence risks that Paul's cocaine-induced paranoia created included aggressive behavior toward family members who questioned his actions, irrational fears that led to dangerous security measures in family homes, an association with criminal elements who posed direct physical threats to his wife and children through their proximity to drug trafficking operations. The financial devastation that Paul's addiction inflicted on his family included diversion of millions of dollars from family savings to drug purchases, fraudulent use of family credit and assets to pay criminal organizations, and economic instability that left family members vulnerable to exploitation by people who knew about his drug dependency and financial desperation. The emotional trauma that Paul's addiction caused family members included constant fear about his health and safety, shame about association with his criminal activities, and psychological damage from living with an unpredictable addict whose behavior swung between artificial euphoria and suicidal depression depending on his drug consumption cycles.
The social isolation that Paul's drug problems created for his family included elimination of normal social relationships, as his addiction required increasing secrecy, exclusion from entertainment industry events where his erratic behavior might have exposed his drug use, and growing distance from community connections that might have provided support during family crises. The role reversal that Paul's addiction forced on family members included children who became responsible for protecting him from consequences of his drug use, spouses who had to manage his career and finances while he was incapacitated by drugs, and relatives who were forced to lie to authorities and media to protect him from criminal prosecution or public exposure. The recovery sabotage that Paul's addiction created within family relationships included manipulation of loved ones who tried to intervene in his drug use, emotional blackmail involving threats of suicide or self-harm if family members attempted to get him professional help, and systematic destruction of any support systems that might have enabled successful addiction treatment. The generational damage that Paul's addiction inflicted on his children included modeling of destructive coping mechanisms, normalization of criminal behavior and drug abuse, and psychological trauma that would affect their own relationships and life choices for decades after his addiction ended, creating ongoing consequences that extended far beyond his individual drug use period. The inheritance destruction that Paul's addiction represented included not just financial losses from drug expenses, but the elimination of family legacy, destruction of positive role model examples, and creation of shame and trauma that would affect family members long after his drug use ended, ensuring that his addiction's damage would extend to future generations. The recovery obstacles that Paul's family destruction created included elimination of motivation for getting clean, removal of support systems that might have encouraged treatment, and creation of psychological guilt and shame that made him more likely to continue drug use rather than face the consequences of damage he had inflicted on people who loved him most. Chapter 8: The Final Descent and Ultimate Cover-Up. As Paul Hogan's cocaine addiction reached its devastating crescendo in the mid-1990s, the combined effects of chronic drug abuse, mounting health problems, and catastrophic relationship destruction created a spiral toward complete self-destruction that required the most elaborate and expensive cover-up operations in entertainment industry history to prevent his total collapse from exposing the entire criminal network that had enabled and profited from his decade-long dependency. The psychological breakdown that Paul experienced during his final addiction phase included complete detachment from reality, persistent paranoid delusions, violent mood swings, and suicidal ideation that made him a constant danger to himself and others while requiring round-the-clock supervision by criminal organization specialists who prevented self-harm while maintaining secrecy about his deteriorating mental condition. The physical deterioration that characterized Paul's final descent included severe malnutrition, cardiovascular damage, neurological impairment, and immune system collapse that left him looking and behaving like a homeless drug addict rather than an international celebrity, requiring extensive cosmetic intervention and body doubles for public appearances that maintained his career facade. By the end, he was barely human. A former associate revealed the drugs had destroyed his body, his mind, and his soul. He would go days without eating, weeks without proper sleep, and months without any normal human interaction. It was horrifying to watch someone literally disappear into addiction while everyone around him pretended everything was normal. The financial crisis that Paul's addiction created during its final phase included complete depletion of his Crocodile Dundee earnings, massive debt to criminal drug suppliers, fraudulent borrowing against future earnings, and systematic liquidation of all assets to maintain drug supplies that had become more expensive as his tolerance required increasingly exotic and powerful substances. The criminal exposure that Paul's desperate drug-seeking created included direct involvement in trafficking operations, participation in money laundering schemes, and association with violent criminal organizations that made him vulnerable to arrest, prosecution, or assassination by competing drug dealers who viewed him as valuable commodity rather than human being deserving protection. The health crisis management that Paul's final addiction phase required included portable life support equipment, emergency medical intervention teams, specialized addiction physicians, and secure medical facilities that could treat repeated overdoses and organ failures without involving legitimate healthcare systems that might have exposed his drug problems to public scrutiny. The career maintenance operations that protected Paul's public image during his final descent included sophisticated special effects to disguise his physical deterioration, voice coaching to mask speech problems caused by drug abuse, scheduling manipulation to hide his unavailability during medical emergencies, and elaborate deception involving body doubles and stand-ins for appearances he was too impaired to handle. The family protection measures that criminal organizations implemented during Paul's final phase included physical security for his relatives who might have become targets for kidnapping or violence by competing criminal groups, financial support to prevent family members from exposing his addiction for money, and psychological manipulation to maintain their silence about his drug problems. The law enforcement evasion that Paul's desperate condition required included constant counter-surveillance operations, corruption payments to police officials who might have investigated his criminal associations, legal manipulation to suppress any charges that might have been filed, and witness intimidation to prevent anyone from providing evidence about his drug activities. The media blackout that protected Paul during his final descent included systematic suppression of all information about his drug problems, strategic placement of false stories that attributed his absence to other causes, direct threats against journalists who investigated his addiction, and coordinated disinformation campaigns that maintained his wholesome public image despite overwhelming evidence of serious drug dependency. The medical emergency concealment that Paul's final addiction phase required included specialized trauma teams that could respond to overdoses without involving legitimate emergency services, portable intensive care equipment that could treat life-threatening complications in secure locations, and corrupted medical professionals who provided emergency treatment while maintaining absolute confidentiality about drug-related causes. The international coordination that protected Paul's final addiction operations included offshore medical facilities where he could receive treatment without legal reporting requirements, diplomatic immunity abuse that prevented law enforcement cooperation between countries, and sophisticated money laundering operations that continued funding his drug purchases despite complete depletion of legitimate financial resources. The succession planning that criminal organizations implemented as Paul's addiction approached fatal conclusion included arrangements for posthumous cover-up operations, estate manipulation to prevent addiction exposure after his death, and contingency plans to protect other celebrity clients if his drug problems were discovered through criminal investigation or medical emergency that revealed criminal organization operations. The ultimate irony of Paul's final descent was that the same criminal networks that had created and sustained his addiction were now spending enormous resources to keep him alive and functional, not out of concern for his well-being, but to protect their investment in his continued secrecy and to prevent his collapse from exposing the massive celebrity drug operations that generated hundreds of millions of dollars in annual revenue. The recovery sabotage that continued throughout Paul's final addiction phase included deliberate prevention of any legitimate treatment attempts, systematic elimination of support systems that might have enabled sobriety, and ongoing drug supply that ensured his continued dependency even as it approached fatal levels. proving that criminal organization profits took priority over human life when celebrities became too valuable as addicted customers to allow recovery. Epilogue: the scandal that Hollywood buried forever. As Paul Hogan somehow survived his cocaine addiction and gradually returned to a semblance of normal life in the late 1990s, the elaborate criminal conspiracy that had enabled, profited from, and covered up his decade-long drug dependency simply vanished into the shadowy networks of Hollywood corruption, leaving no trace of evidence, no admission of wrongdoing, and no accountability for the systematic destruction of one of entertainment's most beloved figures. The recovery process that Paul underwent was itself shrouded in secrecy and surrounded by elaborate security measures designed to prevent any disclosure of his addiction history, while ensuring that his eventual return to public life would be accompanied by carefully constructed alibis that explained his absence and behavioral changes without acknowledging the drug dependency that had nearly killed him. They made it disappear like it never happened, a former investigator revealed. All the evidence was destroyed, all the witnesses were silenced, and all the money trails were erased. Paul came back looking healthy and acting normal, and everyone pretended that he'd just been taking a break from Hollywood rather than fighting for his life against cocaine addiction that had consumed everything he valued. The medical treatment that enabled Paul's recovery from cocaine addiction required specialized rehabilitation services that operated outside legitimate healthcare systems to maintain secrecy while providing the intensive intervention necessary to save his life, demonstrating that even recovery had to be orchestrated by the same criminal networks that had caused his addiction. The financial reconstruction that accompanied Paul's recovery included complex money laundering operations to replace the millions of dollars his addiction had consumed, fraudulent insurance claims to cover addiction-related medical expenses, and elaborate tax evasion schemes to hide the true sources of funds used to rebuild his career and personal life. The relationship repair that Paul attempted during his recovery was complicated by the need to maintain absolute secrecy about his addiction, requiring continued deception of family members, friends, and colleagues who had to be prevented from learning the true reasons for his erratic behavior and extended absence from public life during his most desperate addiction periods. The career rehabilitation that enabled Paul's return to entertainment included systematic suppression of all information about his drug problems, creation of alternative explanations for his career hiatus, and coordination with entertainment industry executives who had financial interests in maintaining his wholesome public image, regardless of his actual history of criminal drug involvement. The ongoing cover-up that continues to protect Paul's addiction secret includes perpetual monitoring of potential informants, systematic destruction of any emerging evidence, and continued corruption of law enforcement and media figures who might investigate or expose the criminal networks that nearly destroyed one of Australia's most beloved cultural ambassadors. The precedent that Paul's case established for future celebrity drug cover-ups includes demonstration that even the most serious addiction problems can be completely hidden from public discovery if sufficient money and criminal coordination are applied to protection operations, encouraging other celebrity drug operations that exploit vulnerable performers while generating enormous profits for criminal organizations. The ongoing criminal networks that profited from Paul's addiction continue operating with impunity throughout Hollywood, using the same techniques of celebrity recruitment, addiction development, and cover-up management to exploit new generations of successful performers while avoiding any legal accountability for their systematic destruction of human lives through drug trafficking and addiction enabling. The ultimate tragedy of Paul's cocaine scandal is not just the personal destruction he experienced during his addiction, but the complete success of criminal organizations in concealing their role in his drug dependency while ensuring that no lessons were learned, no reforms were implemented, and no protection was provided for future celebrity victims of Hollywood's drug networks. The public image that Paul maintains today as wholesome Australian entertainer represents one of history's most successful deceptions, as millions of fans continue believing in his authentic character while remaining completely unaware of the decade-long cocaine addiction that nearly destroyed his life and exposed him to criminal prosecution, violent crime, and death from drug-related health complications. The silence that surrounds Paul's addiction history demonstrates the continuing power of Hollywood's criminal networks to control information, manipulate media coverage, and eliminate evidence of their operations while ensuring that celebrity drug scandals never receive the investigation or exposure they deserve despite their impact on public figures and society. The lasting cover-up that protects Paul's cocaine secret serves as ultimate proof that in Hollywood, money and criminal coordination can literally rewrite history, eliminate evidence of the most serious crimes, and enable continued operation of drug networks that exploit and destroy vulnerable celebrities while generating enormous profits for organized criminal enterprises that operate with complete impunity from law enforcement or public accountability. As Paul Hogan concludes his career with his drug addiction history successfully buried forever, his story stands as testament to Hollywood's power to protect its most valuable assets through any means necessary, including systematic criminal conspiracy, evidence destruction, witness intimidation, and perpetual deception that ensures the entertainment industry's darkest secrets remain hidden from the public that continues believing in the wholesome images of celebrities whose real lives have been consumed by criminal organizations that profit from human destruction while maintaining complete control over public perception and historical truth.